The cardboard box slipped from her hands and hit the pavement with a dull thud. Maya cursed under her breath and bent down to pick it up, adjusting the 2 grocery bags hanging from her other arm. Moving into a new place was always exhausting, but doing it alone made it 10 times worse. She'd been in the neighborhood for exactly 3 days now. The apartment was small, nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom place on the 2nd floor of an old brick building. The paint was peeling in some corners, and the heater made weird noises at night, but it served its purpose. Nobody here knew who she really was, and that's exactly how it needed to stay. To everyone on this street, she was just another young woman trying to make it in the city. A graduate student, she told the landlord, studying sociology at the state university. It was a simple cover story, easy to remember, easy to maintain. The truth was far more complicated. Maya Thompson was 28 years old and had been with the FBI for 6 years. She'd worked her way up faster than most, earning her senior agent status through a combination of sharp instincts and relentless dedication. For the past 3 months, she'd been assigned to a corruption task force investigating allegations of systematic abuse in this police district. The reports were disturbing: illegal shakedowns, harassment of minority residents, false arrests, the kind of corruption that destroyed communities from the inside out. But corruption cases were tricky. You needed solid evidence, the kind that would hold up in federal court. That meant getting close, blending in, watching, and waiting. So here, she was carrying groceries in a neighborhood she'd never been to before, playing a role that required her to be invisible. The evening air was cool, and the streetlights were just starting to flicker on. Maya walked slowly, taking in her surroundings. There was a small grocery store on the corner run by an older man who'd barely made eye contact when she paid. A restaurant with faded paint advertising authentic cuisine. A laundromat where a few people sat waiting for their clothes to finish. Normal, everyday life happening all around her. She was about halfway to her apartment when she noticed the police cruiser. It rolled down the street slowly, almost lazily, like a shark circling. Maya felt the familiar tingle at the base of her neck, the instinct that had kept her alive in dangerous situations before. Something wasn't right. The cruiser pulled up beside her and stopped. The window rolled down, and a man in a police uniform looked out at her. He was in his early 40s, maybe, with a thick neck and cold eyes that swept over her with obvious disdain. "Evening," he said, but there was no friendliness in his voice. Maya shifted the grocery bags. "Good evening, officer." He stepped out of the car, and she noticed the name tag on his uniform, Hastings. She'd heard that name before, seen it in the preliminary reports. Multiple complaints filed against him over the years, all of them dismissed or buried. He was exactly the kind of cop she was here to investigate. "You new around here?" Hastings asked, walking closer. He had a strange smile on his face, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Just moved in a few days ago," Maya replied, keeping her voice neutral and polite. "Is that right?" He looked her up and down again, and Maya felt her skin crawl. "Interesting. We don't get many of your type moving into this neighborhood." There it was. The casual racism, delivered with a smile like it was normal conversation. Maya had experienced it before, too many times to count, but it never stopped making her angry. She pushed the anger down and kept her expression blank. "I'm just here for school," she said. "Graduate program at the university." Hastings nodded slowly like he was processing this information. "School, huh? That's real good. Real good." He paused, then stepped even closer, invading her personal space. "You know, this neighborhood can be rough. A lot of crime around here. Dangerous for a young woman like yourself to be walking around alone at night." Maya felt her jaw tighten. She knew where this was going. "I appreciate the concern, officer." "Oh, it's more than concern, sweetheart." That smile again, cold and predatory. "See, I've been working this beat for 15 years. I know every corner, every alley. I know how to keep people safe." He let that hang in the air for a moment. "But safety, well, that ain't free." There it was, direct and shameless. Maya felt her heart rate increase, but she kept her breathing steady. Years of training helped her maintain the calm exterior even as her mind raced through options. "I'm sorry. What do you mean?" she asked, playing dumb. Hastings laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. Don't play games with me, you seem like a smart girl. You understand how the world works. He crossed his arms over his chest. $200 a month. That's the rate for protection in this neighborhood. You pay that, and I make sure nothing bad happens to you. No break-ins, no harassment, no problems with anybody who might want to give you trouble. Maya's grip tightened on her grocery bags. This was it. This was exactly what the reports had described. But she couldn't blow her cover, not yet. She needed more evidence, more names, more details about how deep this corruption went. "Officer, I'm just a student," she said, trying to sound nervous and intimidated. It wasn't hard to fake. "I don't have that kind of money." Hastings' expression hardened. "Then you better find it. This ain't negotiable." He took another step forward, and Maya instinctively took a step back. "Let me explain something to you. This is my neighborhood. I say who's safe and who isn't. You want to live here, you pay the fee. Simple as that." Maya glanced around. She could see curtains moving in nearby windows, people watching but not intervening. How many of them had gone through this same conversation? How many had paid because they were too afraid not to? And if I don't? The question came out before she could stop it. Hastings' smile vanished completely. His hand moved to rest on his belt close to his weapon, not threatening it directly but making sure she saw it. "Then you're going to find out real quick how hard life can be around here. Parking tickets, noise complaints. Maybe I find some reason to search your apartment, tear the place apart looking for drugs. Maybe you end up getting arrested for something you didn't do." He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Maybe worse. Maya felt her muscles tense, every instinct screaming at her to respond, to put this corrupt cop in his place. But she couldn't. Not yet. She forced herself to take a shaky breath, to let her shoulders slump in defeat. I don't have cash on me right now," she said quietly. "That's fine. I'll be back tomorrow evening, same time. You have my money ready." Hastings straightened up, his demeanor shifting back to casual arrogance. "And don't think about doing anything stupid like calling someone. Who you gonna call? The police?" He laughed at his own joke. "I am the police, sweetheart. Nobody's gonna help you." He walked back to his cruiser, taking his time, making sure she understood that he owned this street. Before getting in, he turned back to her one more time. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said with that cold smile. The cruiser pulled away, and Maya stood there for a long moment, her heart pounding. She looked around again and saw faces quickly disappearing from windows. Everyone had seen, but no one would say anything. That's what fear did to people. It made them invisible, silent, powerless. Maya walked the rest of the way to her apartment in a daze. Once inside, she locked the door and set down her groceries. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally hitting her system. She sat on the cheap couch and took several deep breaths. Tomorrow she would start gathering evidence. She would document everything, build the case piece by piece. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment to feel the weight of what she'd just experienced. This wasn't just corruption. This was systematic. Oppression, and Officer Hastings was just one part of it. She pulled out her encrypted phone and sent a brief message to her partner at the FBI field office. Contact made. Target confirmed. Beginning documentation phase. The response came back quickly. "Be careful." Maya looked around her empty apartment and thought about all the people in this neighborhood living under Hastings' shadow. She thought about the fear in their eyes, the way they hid behind their curtains. Tomorrow she would start fighting back. But she would have to be smart about it. Patient. One wrong move and Hastings would know something was off. She had $200 in her wallet. Tomorrow she would give it to him, and she would make sure every second of that transaction was recorded. It was just the beginning. The next evening came too quickly. Maya had spent most of the day setting up her surveillance equipment. Tiny. Cameras and recording devices hidden in her bag, her jacket even built into a pen she carried in her pocket. Everything was voice-activated and uploaded directly to a secure server. If something happened to her, the evidence would still exist. When Hastings showed up at exactly 6 o'clock, Maya was ready. She had the $200 in an envelope, and she made sure to hand it to him on the street where her hidden camera could capture everything. He took it without counting, just stuffed it in his pocket like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Smart choice," he said, patting her shoulder in a way that made her skin crawl. "You and me, we're gonna get along just fine." Then he drove away, and Maya stood there feeling dirty and angry, but she had what she needed. Clear video of a police officer taking a bribe. It was a start. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya fell into a routine. She'd wake up early and walk around the neighborhood getting to know the area. She'd stop at the corner store, buy coffee at the small cafe, eat lunch at the restaurant with the faded paint. She smiled at people, made small talk, presented herself as just another resident trying to get by. Slowly, people started to warm up to her. The old man at the grocery store, whose name was Vincent, started greeting her with a nod. The woman, who ran the laundromat, Rosa, would wave when she saw her passing by. Small connections, but important ones. Maya knew she needed to earn their trust if she was going to get the whole story. These people had lived with Hastings and his crew for years. They knew things she didn't, had seen things she hadn't, but they were scared, and rightfully so. It was Vincent who opened up first. Maya had been shopping at his store almost every day, and one afternoon when the store was empty, he finally spoke. "You paid him, didn't you?" Vincent asked quietly, not looking at her directly. He was arranging cans on a shelf, his hands moving mechanically. Maya pretended to study a box of cereal. "Paid who?" "Don't play dumb, girl." "Hastings. I saw him talking to you that first night. I've seen it happen 100 times. Vincent's voice was tired, worn down by years of helplessness. "You paid him." Maya set down the cereal box and moved closer. "How long has this been going on?" Vincent stopped arranging cans. He looked around nervously, even though they were alone. 3 years for me, maybe longer for others. "Why haven't you reported it?" The old man laughed bitterly. "Report it to who? The police? He is the police, and he's not alone. There's 3, maybe 4 of them working together. They got this whole neighborhood locked down." He finally looked at her, and Maya saw the defeat in his eyes. "People who don't pay, bad things happen to them. Their shops get vandalized. They get robbed and the police never come. Or worse." "Worse?" Vincent lowered his voice even more. 2 years ago, there was a family on Martin Street. They had a son, good kid, about 17. The father refused to pay, said it wasn't right, that he'd fight it. He paused, his jaw tightening. 3 days later, the son got arrested. They said they found drugs in his backpack at school. The kid never touched drugs in his life, but it didn't matter. He got sent to juvenile detention. Maya felt her anger rising. And the charges? Dropped eventually, but the damage was done. The kid got kicked out of school, lost his scholarship. The family paid after that. Everyone pays after that. "Vincent," Maya said carefully, "if someone could help, if someone could stop this, would you be willing to talk about it? Officially?" The old man looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You're not really a student, are you?" Maya didn't answer directly. "I'm someone who wants to help, but I need proof, evidence, stories from people who've been hurt by this." Vincent turned back to his cans, but Maya could see his hands shaking slightly. "I got records," he said quietly. "Every payment I've made for 3 years, dates, amounts, everything. I kept it all just in case someday someone would care." "I care," Maya said, "and I promise you, Vincent, this is going to end." That conversation opened doors. Vincent introduced her to Rosa at the laundromat, who introduced her to Carlos at the restaurant. Each of them had stories. Each of them had been paying for years. Carlos was particularly helpful. He had security, cameras in his restaurant, and he'd kept footage of multiple shakedowns. He showed Maya one video that made her blood boil. Hastings and another officer, a younger guy with a smirk on his face, had cornered Carlos in his own restaurant. They'd eaten a meal, then demanded money instead of paying. When Carlos protested, they'd threatened to call the health inspector, to shut him down for code violations that didn't exist. "I work 16 hours a day," Carlos told her, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "I built this place from nothing, and these men, They take from me like I'm some kind of ATM machine, like my work means nothing. Maya documented everything. She met people in quiet corners, in their homes, always careful to make sure Hastings or his partners weren't watching. She recorded their stories, made copies of their evidence, built a case that was becoming more damning by the day. But the more she learned, the more dangerous it became. Hastings was getting more comfortable around her, stopping by her apartment building every few days, sometimes just to check on her. His visits always felt threatening, even when he was smiling. One evening, about 2 weeks after she'd paid him the first time, Hastings showed up with another officer. The man was shorter, stocky, with cold eyes that reminded Maya of a lizard. Hastings introduced him as Officer Chen. "My partner here works this beat too," Hastings said casually. "Thought you two should meet." Chen looked her up and down, his expression unreadable. "Hastings tells me you're a good tenant, smart, cooperative." Maya forced a smile. "Just trying to stay out of trouble." "That's what we like to hear," Chen said. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it, blowing smoke in her direction. "You know, cooperation is important in a neighborhood like this. We look out for people who look out for us." It was the same speech, slightly different words. Maya realized with a sinking feeling that Chen was probably here to establish his own payment schedule. She was right. "I handle this block on Tuesdays and Thursdays," Chen continued. "Hastings has got Mondays and Wednesdays. We keep the whole area covered, make sure everyone stays safe." He took another drag of his cigarette. "For you, since you're already working with my partner here, we'll keep it simple. Another 100 a week for my coverage. That's fair, right?" Maya felt trapped. If she refused, she'd blow her cover. But agreeing meant going deeper into this corrupt system. She thought about Vincent, about Carlos, about all the people who'd been paying these criminals for years. That's a lot of money," she said, trying to sound scared. It wasn't entirely an act. Hastings stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You having money problems? Maybe we can work something out. Young woman like you, there's always other ways to pay." The implication was clear and disgusting. Maya felt her hands clench into fists. She forced herself to relax, to keep breathing normally. "No," she said firmly. "I'll find the money." "Good girl," Chen said, flicking his cigarette onto the sidewalk. "First payment due Thursday, don't forget." After they left, Maya went straight to her apartment and called her FBI partner Rodriguez. He answered on the first ring. "We've got a problem," Maya said. "It's bigger than we thought. At least 4 officers involved, maybe more. They're running a full protection racket." Rodriguez was silent for a moment. "Maya, this is getting dangerous. Maybe it's time to pull you out. Bring in a tactical team." "No," Maya said immediately. "We're close. I've got witnesses willing to talk, video evidence, financial records, but if we move too soon, we'll only get the low-level guys. I need to identify everyone involved, get evidence on all of them." "At what risk? These guys are getting comfortable around you. That's when they're most dangerous." Maya knew he was right, but she also knew what would happen if they pulled her out now. The case would fall apart. The evidence would disappear. And people like Vincent and Carlos would keep paying, keep living in fear for years to come. "Give me 2 more weeks," she said. "I'll get what we need." Rodriguez sighed. 2 weeks. But the first sign of serious danger, you extract immediately, that's an order. Understood. Maya hung up and looked around her apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in. She thought about Hastings' implied threat, about Chen's cold eyes, about all the other corrupt officers she hadn't even met yet. She pulled out her laptop and started reviewing the evidence she'd collected. Vincent's payment records, meticulously kept in a small notebook. Carlos's security footage. Testimony from Rosa about harassment her customers had faced. Bank statements showing suspicious cash withdrawals that lined up with payment schedules. It was solid evidence, but she needed more. She needed to catch them in the act, get them on record admitting to the scheme. She needed something so clear and undeniable that no lawyer could explain it away. The next few days were tense. Maya, paid Chen his $100 on Thursday, making sure to record the transaction. She watched as Hastings and Chen worked the neighborhood, stopping people, collecting money, spreading fear like a disease. But she also watched the community. She saw the way people looked out for each other, warned each other when the police were coming. She saw small acts of resistance, tiny rebellions against the system that oppressed them. A shop owner who shorted his payment by a few dollars. A teenager who talked back to Hastings, just for a second, before his mother pulled him away. These people were tired of being victims. They just needed someone to help them fight back. Maya was sitting in Carlos's restaurant one afternoon eating lunch and reviewing her notes when she saw something through the window that made her blood run cold. Hastings had stopped a teenage boy on the street. The kid couldn't have been more than 16, thin and nervous looking. His mother was with him holding shopping bags. Hastings was in the kid's face, poking him in the chest, clearly aggressive. The mother was trying to get between them, her face pale with fear. Maya couldn't hear what was being said, but she could read the situation perfectly. This was about to go bad. Maya dropped her fork and stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Carlos looked up from the counter, following her gaze out the window. "Don't," he said quietly. "You can't help him." But Maya was already moving toward the door. She'd seen enough. For 2 weeks she'd watched and waited and played her role, letting these corrupt officers terrorize people while she gathered evidence. But watching them hurt a kid crossed a line she couldn't ignore. Outside, the situation was getting worse. Hastings had grabbed the boy by his shirt and shoved him against a wall. The mother was crying now, begging the officer to let her son go. A few people had stopped on the street, watching nervously from a distance, but nobody was intervening. "I didn't do nothing," the boy was saying, his voice cracking with fear. "I was just walking home." "Don't talk back to me," Hastings snarled. "You kids around here think you can just disrespect the police? Think you're tough?" Maya's training kicked in. She assessed the situation quickly. Hastings was escalating, using excessive force on a minor for no legitimate reason. The mother was trying to pull him away, which could make things worse. And from what Maya could see, the boy hadn't done anything wrong. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She walked toward them, keeping her movements calm and non-threatening. "Officer Hastings," she called out. "Is everything okay here?" Hastings turned, his face red with anger. When he saw it was her, his expression shifted to irritation. "This doesn't concern you. Go back to wherever you came from." The boy's mother looked at Maya with desperate eyes. She was clutching her shopping bag so tight her knuckles were white. "Please," she whispered. "Please help my son." Maya came closer, speaking in a steady voice. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. The boy looks like he's just heading home with his mother." "What did I just say?" Hastings released the boy, but turned his full attention to Maya now. "This is police business. You need to walk away right now." The boy straightened his shirt with shaking hands, his eyes wide. His mother put her arm around him, trying to pull him away, but Hastings blocked their path. "Actually, I'd like to know what he did wrong," Maya said. She could feel her heart pounding, but her voice stayed calm. "Because from what I saw, he was just walking down the street." Hastings took a step toward her, his jaw clenched. "You're interfering with official police business. That's a crime. What crime did he commit?" Maya pressed. She could see people gathering now. More residents coming out of their homes and shops. Some were holding up their phones. "Good, let them record this." "He was being disrespectful," Hastings said, running his mouth. "That's not a crime. Obstruction is a crime. Which is what you're doing right now." Hastings was getting angrier, his voice rising. "I know what you are. You're one of those activist types, think you know better than the police. Think you can tell us how to do our jobs." Maya kept her expression neutral. "I'm not telling you how to do your job. I'm asking why you're harassing this boy and his mother." The mother spoke up, her voice trembling. "We paid you. Just last week we paid you. Why won't you leave us alone?" It was the wrong thing to say. Hastings' face went from red to purple. He turned back to the woman and boy. "Oh, so now you're talking about our business in front of everyone? Real smart." The boy pulled away from his mother. "You people are supposed to protect us, not shake us down for money." "Shut your mouth," Hastings shouted. He grabbed the boy again, this time harder, and the boy cried out in pain. Maya moved without thinking. "Stop. You're hurting him." She reached for her phone, pulling it out to record what was happening. She needed documentation of this. needed proof of Hastings's violence on camera. But the moment her hand moved, everything changed. Hastings saw the phone and something in him snapped. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe it was rage, maybe it was the fear of being exposed. Whatever it was, his hand went straight to his holster. In one smooth motion, he drew his service weapon and pointed it directly at Maya's face. Time seemed to slow down. Maya heard the mother scream. She heard the boy yelling. She heard someone on the street shouting, "Oh my God, he's got a gun!" But all she could see was the barrel of that weapon pointed at her forehead. And all she could hear was the blood rushing in her ears. "Drop the phone," Hastings screamed. "Drop it right now and get on the ground." Maya's training took over completely. Her body knew what to do even as her mind was racing. She slowly raised her hands, the phone still in one of them, moving with deliberate care. No sudden movements. No threatening gestures. Everything slow and visible. "Officer Hastings," she said, and her voice was surprisingly steady. "I'm not a threat to you. I'm just a resident of this neighborhood. Shut up. Drop the phone and get down on the ground." "Okay," Maya said softly. "I'm going to put the phone down. I'm moving slowly. Watch my hands." She started to lower her arms, but Hastings stepped closer, the gun still aimed at her head. He was sweating now, his eyes wild. "You think you're smart? Think you can record me and make trouble?" Maya could see people all around them now. At least a dozen residents had come out, and most of them had their phones out, recording everything. The boy's mother was sobbing, still holding her son. Carlos had come out of his restaurant and was standing on the sidewalk, his face pale with shock. This was bad. This was about as bad as it could get. Maya had a choice to make, and she had maybe 5 seconds to make it. If she stayed in character, played the scared resident, she might be able to de-escalate. Hastings might lower his weapon, might let this go with just a threat. She could maintain her cover and continue gathering evidence. But if something went wrong, if Hastings's finger slipped or his paranoia got worse, she could die. People could see a corrupt cop murder an unarmed woman in the street. The case would explode, but she wouldn't be alive to see it. The other option was to identify herself, reveal that she was FBI. It would blow her cover completely, end the undercover operation, but it might save her life. Might save the boy and his mother, too. Maya looked at Hastings' eyes and made her decision. He was too far gone, too scared and angry to think rationally. If she stayed in character, he might pull that trigger. She'd seen it before. Cops who got so caught up in their own authority and fear that they made terrible decisions in split seconds. She couldn't take that risk. "Officer Hastings," she said, and this time her voice was completely different. Gone was the nervous graduate student. This was the voice of someone with authority, someone who was used to being in control. "I need you to listen to me very carefully." Hastings blinked, confused by the change in her tone. "What?" "I'm going to reach into my jacket," Maya said slowly. "I'm going to show you something. My hands are going to move slowly." "Don't shoot," I said. "Get on the ground." "Derek Hastings," Maya said, using his full name deliberately. "I'm Senior FBI Agent Maya Thompson. Badge number 47229. You are currently pointing a firearm at a federal agent. I need you to lower your weapon immediately." The words hung in the air like thunder. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Hastings just stared at her, his gun still raised, his face showing a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "You're lying," he said, but his voice wavered. "I'm not lying. I'm going to show you my credentials now." I'm reaching into my inside jacket pocket. "Watch my hands." Maya moved with excruciating slowness, her right hand going to her jacket. She could feel the weight of her FBI badge and identification in the inner pocket, where she'd kept it hidden for weeks. Her fingers closed around the leather case. She pulled it out slowly, then opened it to show the gold badge and her federal identification card. Hastings stared at it. His face went from red to white in seconds. The gun in his hand wavered, but he didn't lower it. "That's fake," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. "That's gotta be fake." "It's not fake," Maya said. She could hear sirens now in the distance. Someone must have called 911. "Other officers are coming. When they get here, they're going to see you pointing a gun at an FBI agent. That's assault with a deadly weapon on a federal officer. That's a federal crime that carries a minimum of 10 years in prison. Is that really what you want?" Hastings looked around wildly. He saw all the people watching, all the phones recording. He saw the boy and his mother. He saw his entire career, his entire life falling apart in front of him. "I didn't know," he said, his voice cracking. "How was I supposed to know?" You weren't supposed to point your gun at anyone, Maya said. You weren't supposed to shake down residents for money. You weren't supposed to assault a minor. But you did all of those things, and now everyone here has seen it. The sirens were getting closer. Hastings' hand was shaking now. The gun still pointed at Maya, but his grip loosening. He looked like a man who'd just realized he'd made the worst mistake of his life. "Put the gun down, Officer Hastings," Maya said firmly. "It's over." For a terrible moment, Maya thought he might not do it. She thought he might be so panicked, so desperate that he'd do something catastrophic. Her muscles were coiled, ready to move if she had to, though she knew that at this range she'd have almost no chance. Then, slowly, Hastings lowered the weapon. The tension broke like a snapped wire. The boy's mother collapsed to her knees, still crying. People on the street started talking all at once. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. But she didn't relax. Not yet. 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. 4 officers jumped out, hands on their weapons. One of them Maya recognized from her briefing files. Officer Bradley, another name that had come up in complaints. Another member of Hastings's crew. This was about to get complicated. "We got a call about an officer down," Bradley said, looking around in confusion. Then he saw Hastings standing there with his gun lowered and Maya with her badge out. His eyes went wide. "Nobody's down," Maya said calmly. "But Officer Hastings just committed assault with a deadly weapon on a federal agent. I need you to secure his weapon and place him in custody." Bradley looked at Hastings, then at Maya, then at all the witnesses with their phones out. She could see him trying to calculate, trying to figure out if there was any way to protect his partner. "Ma'am," Bradley said carefully, "I'm going to need to verify your credentials." "Of course," Maya said. She pulled out her encrypted phone and dialed Rodriguez's direct line. He answered immediately. "This is Senior Agent Rodriguez, FBI," she said into the phone, then switched to speaker. "Can you confirm the identity of Agent Maya Thompson, badge 4729? Rodriguez's voice came through clear. "Confirmed. Agent Thompson is currently on assignment in your district." "What's going on?" Maya looked directly at Bradley. "Your officer just pointed his weapon at me during an undercover operation. I need FBI backup here immediately, and I need Officer Hastings placed under arrest right now." There was a pause on the phone. Then Rodriguez said, "Backup is on the way. ET 5 minutes." Bradley holstered his weapon and approached Hastings slowly. "Derek," he said quietly, "give me your gun." Hastings looked at his partner with desperate eyes. "I didn't know, man." "How was I supposed to know?" "Just give me the gun." Hastings handed over his weapon with shaking hands. Bradley took it and secured it in his own belt, but Maya could see the conflict on his face. He was trying to figure out his next move, probably wondering how much she knew, how deep her investigation had gone. Maya kept her badge visible and her phone ready. The crowd around them had grown larger. She could see Vincent standing near his store, his face a mixture of shock and something else. Hope, maybe. Rosa was there too, and Carlos. All the people she'd spoken to over the past 2 weeks were watching this unfold. "Officer Bradley," Maya said clearly, making sure her voice carried. "I need you to place Officer Hastings under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon on a federal agent. Read him his rights." Bradley shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, maybe we should wait for your backup. Let the FBI handle this. I am FBI and I'm handling it right now. Either you arrest him or I will." Before Bradley could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "What the hell is going on here?" A third officer was approaching, older with sergeant stripes on his sleeve. Maya didn't recognize him from her files, which might be good or might be bad. He looked at the scene with confusion and growing anger. "Sergeant Pierce," Bradley said, relief evident in his voice. "We've got a situation here. This woman says she's FBI and she's claiming Hastings assaulted her." Pierce looked at Maya, then at her badge, then at all the witnesses with their phones out. He was smarter than Bradley, she could tell. He knew this was already beyond damage control. "Agent Thompson," Pierce said carefully, reading her name from the badge. "I'm going to need a full explanation of what happened here." Maya gave it to him in clear, concise terms. "I've been working undercover in this neighborhood for 2 weeks investigating corruption allegations. Officer Hastings approached me this evening while I was attempting to prevent him from using excessive force on a minor. When I took out my phone to document the incident, he drew his weapon and pointed it at my head. Multiple witnesses recorded the entire event." She gestured to the crowd where dozens of phones were still raised. Pierce's jaw tightened as he realized just how bad this was. The boy and his mother are also victims, Maya continued. I witnessed Officer Hastings physically assault the minor without cause, and I heard the mother state that they had already paid protection money to Hastings. I have 2 weeks of documented evidence of systematic extortion, bribery, and civil rights violations involving multiple officers in this precinct. Bradley went pale. Pierce closed his eyes for a moment like a man watching his career end in real time. Chen, Bradley muttered. She knows about Chen. And the others, Maya said. She looked directly at Bradley. Including you. The sound of more sirens filled the air. 3 black SUVs came around the corner, FBI logos clear on their sides. Maya had never been so happy to see backup in her life. The vehicles stopped and agents poured out. Rodriguez was the first one to reach her, his face tight with concern. You okay?
I'm fine, Maya said.
But we need to secure these officers and start processing the scene. We've got multiple witnesses and video evidence of Hastings pointing his weapon at me. Rodriguez nodded and started giving orders. Within minutes, the street was swarming with federal agents. Hastings was placed in handcuffs, officially under arrest. Bradley and Officer Chen, who had arrived during the chaos and tried to slip away, were also detained. Pierce was separated for questioning. Maya watched it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. 2 weeks of careful planning, of playing a role, of watching these corrupt officers terrorize innocent people, and it had all come apart in less than 5 minutes. Not the way she'd planned it, but maybe the way it needed to happen. The boy and his mother were sitting on a bench now, being interviewed by another agent. The mother kept looking at Maya with tears in her eyes, mouthing, "Thank you," over and over. The boy was calmer now, the fear starting to fade from his face. Vincent approached Maya slowly, like he was worried she might disappear if he moved too fast. "You're really FBI?" "I'm really FBI," Maya confirmed. "And you're going to stop them?" "All of them?" "That's the plan." Vincent's face crumpled, and for a moment Maya thought he might cry. Instead, he grabbed her hand in both of his and squeezed it tight. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for caring." Rosa and Carlos came over too, and soon Maya was surrounded by residents who'd been living in fear for years. They were touching her arm, shaking her hand, telling her their stories all at once. It was overwhelming and humbling at the same time. Rodriguez pulled her aside after a few minutes. "We need to debrief. The whole operation just went public." "I know," Maya said. "I'm sorry. I should have extracted when things got dangerous." "You saved that kid," Rodriguez said, looking back at the boy on the bench. "And you got Hastings on camera pointing a gun at a federal agent. That's not nothing. What about the rest of the case? All the evidence I collected?" "Still good. Better than good, actually. We'll need to move fast, though. Chen and Bradley will lawyer up, might try to cut deals. We should hit the precinct tonight. Get their records before anyone can destroy evidence." Maya nodded. Her mind was already racing ahead, thinking about what came next. Search warrants, interviews, building the case against every corrupt officer involved in the scheme. But first, there was something else she needed to do. She walked over to where Hastings was sitting in the back of a police cruiser, hands cuffed behind him. His face was slack with shock, his eyes unfocused. He looked like a man who still couldn't quite believe what had happened. Maya stood in front of the open door and looked at him. "You want to know the really stupid thing about all this?" she said quietly. "I was planning to take you down anyway. I had evidence on you, on Chen, on Bradley. I had witness statements, financial records, video of your shakedowns. I had enough to send you to prison for years." Hastings looked up at her, his eyes red. "But you couldn't help yourself," Maya continued. "You saw a teenage boy and his mother. People who'd already paid you, and you still had to hurt them. You had to show everyone who was in charge. And then when someone tried to stop you, tried to protect that kid, you pointed a gun at them. I didn't know you were FBI," Hastings said, his voice small. "That's your defense? That you only meant to threaten and assault a regular citizen?" Maya shook her head. "That's not better. That's actually worse, because it means you've been doing this to people who couldn't fight back. People who had no power, people who were just trying to live their lives." Hastings looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "I talked to a lot of people in this neighborhood," Maya said. "People you terrorized for years. Single mothers working 2 jobs who gave you money they needed for food. Old men like Vincent who paid you with money from their retirement. Families who went without because you decided you deserved a cut of everything they earned. I was just trying to make some extra money. Hastings mumbled. You were stealing, Maya corrected. You were using your badge and your gun to rob people, and now you're going to prison for it. She turned to walk away, but Hastings called out to her. Wait. Maya stopped but didn't turn around. How many others? Hastings asked. How many other officers are you going after? Maya looked back over her shoulder. All of them. Everyone who was part of this. Everyone who took money. Everyone who looked the other way. Everyone who helped you run this scheme. You're not the only one going down, Hastings. You're just the first. She walked back to Rodriguez, who was coordinating with the local FBI field office. We need to move on the precinct now, she said. Before word gets out and people start destroying evidence. Rodriguez checked his watch. It's almost 7. Most of the administrative staff will be gone, but we can get a judge to sign off on an emergency search warrant. Give me 20 minutes. Maya nodded and looked around the street. The crowd was starting to disperse, but people kept stopping to talk to the FBI agents, offering information, volunteering to testify. It was like a dam had broken. Years of fear and silence were pouring out all at once. A news van pulled up at the corner, a reporter and cameraman jumping out. Rodriguez groaned. And here comes the media circus. Let them come, Maya said. These people deserve to have their story told. The reporter tried to approach Maya, but another agent intercepted them, setting up a perimeter. The cameraman was filming everything, though, getting shots of Hastings in the police cruiser, of the witnesses, of the FBI agents working the scene. Maya's phone buzzed. It was a text from her supervisor at the field office. News is already running the story. Video from witnesses hitting social media. This is about to get very big very fast. She showed the message to Rodriguez, who grimaced. So much for a quiet investigation. Nothing about this was ever going to be quiet, Maya said. Not once we started making arrests. Rodriguez's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then smiled. Judge signed the warrant. We're good to go. He looked at Maya. You want to be there when we raid the precinct? Absolutely. They gathered a team of 12 agents and headed to the police station. Maya rode in Rodriguez's SUV, watching the neighborhood pass by. She thought about all the conversations she'd had over the past 2 weeks, all the stories she'd heard, all the evidence she'd gathered. This case was about more than just a few corrupt cops. It was about a system that had failed an entire community, about people who'd been taught that they couldn't trust the very officers who were supposed to protect them. Taking down Hastings and his crew was just the first step. Real change would take time, effort, and a lot of people willing to fight for it. But at least it was a start. The police station was a squat brick building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. As the FBI vehicles pulled up, Maya could see officers inside looking out the windows, trying to figure out what was happening. Rodriguez held up the search warrant as they entered. Federal agents. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize all records related to officers Derek Hastings, Thomas Chen, and Robert Bradley. The desk sergeant, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, just stared at them. What? Where's your captain? Rodriguez demanded. In his office, but Rodriguez was already moving, agents fanning out behind him. Maya followed, her badge clearly visible. They found the captain in his office, a heavy-set man who looked up in alarm as his door burst open. What the hell is this? FBI, Rodriguez said, showing his badge and the warrant. 3 of your officers were just arrested for corruption, extortion, and assault on a federal agent. We're here to collect evidence. The captain's face went from confused to horrified in seconds. Hastings? And Chen and Bradley, Maya added. How long have you known they were running a protection racket in the neighborhood? I don't, the captain stumbled over his words. I want my lawyer. That's your right, Rodriguez said. But this search is happening with or without your cooperation. Agents were already moving through the building, collecting files, hard drives, anything that might contain evidence. Maya went straight to the records room, looking for personnel files and complaint records. What she found was damning. Dozens of complaints against Hastings, Chen, and Bradley over the years. Most marked as unfounded or unable to substantiate. A few had been investigated but went nowhere. The pattern was clear. These officers had been operating with impunity for years, and their supervisors had either ignored it or covered it up. Maya photographed everything, made sure every document was logged and bagged as evidence. This wasn't just about 3 corrupt cops anymore. This was about institutional failure on a massive scale. It was past midnight when they finally finished at the precinct. Maya was exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee, but there was still work to do. Back at the FBI field office, she and Rodriguez started going through everything they'd collected. Personnel files, financial records, complaint logs, security footage from the precinct showing officers coming and going at odd hours. "This is going to take weeks to process," Rodriguez said, rubbing his eyes. "Then we better get started," Maya replied. The news broke nationally the next morning. The video of Hastings pointing his gun at Maya had been shared thousands of times on social media before sunrise. By the time Maya woke up after 3 hours of sleep, her face was on every news channel in the country. "FBI agent faces down corrupt cop," read one headline. "Federal investigation exposes police extortion ring," said another. The video was everywhere and it was powerful. Seeing a police officer point a loaded weapon at an unarmed woman, even an FBI agent, sparked outrage across the country. But Maya wasn't interested in being a hero. She was interested in building a case that would stick. Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation expanded rapidly. With Hastings, Chen, and Bradley in custody, the pressure was on. Maya worked 18-hour days, conducting interviews, reviewing evidence, coordinating with federal prosecutors. The case was growing bigger than anyone had anticipated. Chen cracked first. Facing decades in federal prison, he agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. What he told them opened up the investigation even wider. The protection racket wasn't just 4 officers. It was a network of 9 corrupt cops who'd been operating for over 5 years, taking in an estimated $3 million in illegal payments. The precinct captain, who'd claimed ignorance, was implicated too. Chen testified that the captain had known about the scheme and had taken a cut to look the other way. 2 sergeants were also involved, helping to bury complaints and protect the officers when residents tried to fight back. Maya spent hours with the community members who'd been victimized. Vincent sat in the FBI interview room and went through his records page by page, explaining every payment he'd made. Rosa brought in 3 years of receipts showing how she'd paid protection money, disguised as consulting fees. Carlos provided security, footage from his restaurant that showed at least 15 different shakedowns. But the most powerful testimony came from the families who'd been hurt the most. The family whose son had been arrested on false charges. A woman whose shop had been vandalized after she'd missed a payment. An elderly couple who'd lost their savings paying off corrupt officers. Maya made sure every story was documented, every piece of evidence cataloged. She worked with the prosecutors to build a case so airtight that no defense lawyer could poke holes in it. The media attention was intense. Reporters camped outside the FBI field office trying to get interviews. Maya's face was recognized everywhere she went. People stopped her on the street to shake her hand, to thank her, to tell her their own stories of police corruption. It was overwhelming, and sometimes Maya wanted to hide from it all. But Rodriguez kept reminding her why it mattered. "People need to see that the system can work," he said. "They need to see that corrupt cops can be held accountable." 6 months after the incident on the street, the trial began. The prosecution had decided to try Hastings separately from the others, arguing that his assault on a federal agent made him the most serious offender. The courthouse was packed every day, with community members filling the gallery and reporters taking notes. Maya was the star witness. She took the stand on day 3 and spent 6 hours walking the jury through her investigation. She explained how she'd gone undercover, how she'd gained the trust of the community, how she'd documented the systematic corruption. She showed them videos of shakedowns, played audio recordings of officers demanding payment, presented financial records that proved the conspiracy. But the moment everyone was waiting for was when the prosecution played the video from the street. The courtroom went silent as the footage showed Hastings pointing his gun at Maya's head. You could hear his voice screaming at her to get on the ground. You could see Maya's hands raising slowly, see the fear on the faces of the witnesses. When the video ended, there were tears in the jury box. Hastings' lawyer tried to argue that his client had been doing his job, that he'd felt threatened, that he hadn't known Maya was FBI. But the prosecution destroyed that defense. If Hastings had really felt threatened, why had he already been engaged in assaulting a minor? If he was just doing his job, why had the mother testified that they'd already paid him protection money? And as for not knowing Maya was FBI, the prosecution pointed out that Hastings had no legal right to point a gun at any civilian who was recording him. Maya also testified about the other victims. She told the story of Vincent, who'd paid Hastings for 3 years out of fear. She described how Carlos had been